안녕하세요, 여러분. 책 읽어주는 누나입니다. 오늘 소개할 책은 Bridge to Terabitia라는 책인데요. 저희 학교에서 지금 잉글리시 시간에 읽고 있는 책이에요. Bridge to Terabitia는 1977년에 만들어진 책으로 굉장히 오래됐는데요. 근데 뉴베리 상도 받고 굉장히 좋은 책으로 선정이 되어서 학교에서도 권장도서이며 그리고 영화로도 만들어진 굉장히 유명한 작품인데요. 이 책을 캐서린 패터슨 작가가 쓰게 된 계기는 아들의 친구였던 리사가 번개를 맞는 사고로 슬프게 세상을 떠나자 그 아들을 위해서 쓴 책이라고 하는데요. 그것과 비슷한 내용을 담고 있습니다. 이 책의 주인공은 제스 에런스인데요. 제스는 그림 그리기를 좋아하고 달리기를 좋아하는 남자인데요. 근데 또래 남자애들보다 약간 조금 남자애다운 그런 일들을 많이 하지 않아서 그림 그리는 것도 잘 인정을 받지 못하는 그런 남자였어요. 그리고 또 다른 주인공인 레슬리 버크는 여자애인데요. 그런데 여자애인지 남자애인지 분간하기 어려울 만큼 짧은 머리와 그리고 그때는 이상하다고 여겨졌던 짧은 반바지와 단색의 옷을 입고 있어서 굉장히 톰보이스러운 여자애였는데요. Bridge to Terabitia는 그 둘의 우정 이야기예요. 레슬리는 상상력이 굉장히 뛰어난데 그 상상력을 가지고 제스와 함께 그 자기만의 비밀 나라를 만들자고 해서 그 밧줄 그대를 타고 넘어올 수 있는 그 숲속에서 테라비티아라는 작은 왕국을 서로 만들기로 합니다. 그래서 같이 아름다운 테라비티아라는 나라를 만들어가면서 제스도 점점 자신감을 키워가고 레슬리도 좋은 친구를 만들게 돼요. 이런 좋은 이야기가 영화로도 그대로 굉장히 좋게 만들어졌는데 단지 배경은 조금 더 현대적이게 되어 있어서 레슬리가 굳이 남자같이 보이는 게 그런 큰 특징이 아니라서 레슬리 배우는 굉장히 예쁜 애가 됐고요. 영화도 너무너무 좋으니까 꼭 보시는 걸 추천을 드립니다. 저희 학교에서도 잉글리시 반에서 지금 그것도 보고 있거든요. 그러면 Bridge to Terabitia의 첫 챕터를 한번 맛보기로 읽어드리겠습니다. Catherine Patterson, Bridge to Terabithia. I wrote this book for my son, David Lord Patterson, but after he read it, he asked me to put Lisa's name on this page as well, and so I do. For David Patterson and Lisa Hill, Banzai. One, Jess Oliver Aarons Jr. Ballroom, Barapity. Good. His dad had the pickup going. He could get up now. Jess slid out of bed and into his overalls. He didn't worry about a shirt because once he began running, he would be as hot as a popping grease even if the morning air was chill. Or shoes because the bottoms of his feet were by now as tough as his worn-out sneakers. Where are you going, Jess? Mabel lifted herself sleepily from the double bed where she and Joyce Ann slept. Shh, he warned. The walls were thin. Mama would be mad as flies in a fruit jar if they woke her up in this time of day. He patted Mabel's hair and yanked the twisted sheet up to her small chin. Just over the cow field. he whispered. Mabel smiled and snuggled down under the sheet. Gonna run? Maybe. Of course he was going to run. He had gotten up early every day all summer to run. He figured if he worked at it, and Lord, he had worked, he could be the fastest runner in 5th grade when school opened up. He had to be the fastest, not one of the fastest or next to the fastest, but the fastest, the very fast. He tiptoed outside the house. The place was so rattly that it screeched whenever you put your foot down, but Jess had found that if you tiptoed, it only gave a low moan, and he could usually get outdoors without making Mama or Ellie or Brenda or Joyce Ann. Mabel was another matter. She was going on 7, and she worshipped him, which was okay sometimes. When you were the only boy smashed between 4 sisters, and the older 2 had despised you ever since you stopped letting them dress you up and wheel around in their rusty doll carriage, and the littlest one cried if you looked at her cross-eyed, it was nice to have somebody who worshipped you, even if it got unhandy sometimes. He began to trot across the yard. His breath was coming out in little puffs, cold for August. But it was early yet. By noontime, when his mother would him out working, it would be hot enough. Miss Bessie stared at him sleepily as he climbed across the scrap heap, over the fence, and onto the cow field. "Moo," she said, looking for all the world like another Mabel with her big, brown, droopy eyes. "Hey, Miss Bessie," Jess said soothingly. "Just go on back to sleep." Miss Bessie strolled over to a greenish patch. Most of the field was brown and dry, and yanked up a mouthful. "That's the girl. Just eat your breakfast. Don't pay me no mind." He always started at the northwest corner of the field, crouched over like the runners he had seen in the wide world of sports. "Bang," he said, and took off flying around the cow field. Miss Bessie strolled towards the center, still following him with her droopy eyes, chewing slowly. She didn't look very smart, even for a cow, but she was plenty bright enough to get out of Jess's way. His straw-colored hair flapped hard against his forehead, and his arms and legs flew out every which way. He had never learned to run properly, but he was long-legged for a 10-year-old, and no one had more grit than he. Lark Creek Elementary was short on everything, especially athletic equipment, so all the balls went to the upper grades at the recess time after lunch. Even a 5th grader started out the period with a ball. It was sure to be in the hands of a 6th or 7th grader before the hour was half over. The older boys always took the dry center of the upper field for their ball games, while the girls claimed the small top section for hopscotch and jump rope and hanging around talking. So the lower grade boys had started this running thing. They will all line up on the far side of the lower field, where it was either muddy or deep crusty ruts. Earl Watson was no good at running, but had a big mouth and would yell "bang!" and they'd race to a line where they towed across at the other end. One time last year just had won, not just the first heat, but the whole shebang, only once. But it had put into his mouth a taste for winning. Ever since he'd been in 1st grade, he'd been that crazy little kid that draws all the time. But one day, April the 22nd, a drizzly Monday, it had been. He ran ahead of them all, the red mud slushing up through the holes in the bottom of his sneakers. For the rest of that day, and until after lunch on the next, he had been the fastest kid in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. He only a 4th grader. On Tuesday, Wayne Pettis had won again as usual. But this year, Wayne Pettis would be in the 6th grade. He'd play football until Christmas and baseball until June, with the rest of the big guys. Anyone had a chance to be the fastest runner, and by Miss Bessie, this year it was going to be Jess or Oliver Aarons Jr. Jess pumped his arm harder and bent his head for the distant fence. He could hear the third grade boys screaming him on. They would follow him around like a country music star, and Maybelle would pop her buttons. Her brother was the fastest, the best. That ought to give her the rest of the first grade something to chew their cuds on. Even his dad would be proud. Just rounded the corner. He couldn't keep on going quite so fast, but he continued running for a while. It would build him up. Maybelle would tell Daddy, so it wouldn't look as though he, Jess, was a bragger. Maybe Dad would be so proud he'd forget all about how tired he was from the long drive back and forth to Washington and the digging and hauling all day. He would get right down on the floor and wrestle the way they used to. Old Dad would be surprised at how strong he had gotten in the last couple of years. His body was begging him to quit, but just pushed on. He had to let that puny chest of his know who was the boss. Jess! It was Maybelle yelling from the other side of the scrap heap. Mama says you gotta come in and eat now. Leave the milk until later. Oh, crud. He'd run too long. Now everyone would know he's been out and start it on him. Yeah, okay. He turned, still running, and headed for the scrap heap. Without breaking his rhythm, he climbed over the fence, scrambled across the scrap heap, dumped Mabel on the head, ow! And trotted onto the house. Well, look at the big Olympic star, said Ellie, banging 2 cups onto the table so that the strong black coffee sloshed out, sweating like a knock-kneed mule. Jess pushed his damp hair out of his face and plunked down on the wooden bench. He dumped 2 spoonfuls of sugar into his cup and slurped to keep the hot coffee from scalding his mouth. Ooh, Mama, he stinks. Brenda pinched her nose with her pinky crooked delicately. Make him wash. Get over here to the sink and wash yourself, his mother said without